On the 10th of January 1916, Dr. Reginald Koettlitz and his wife, Mary Louise Koettlitz, died in the small Karoo town of Cradock, Eastern Cape, South Africa. They died within 2 hours of each other in Cradock Hospital, he of acute dysentery, and his devoted wife of heart disease. That's a quote from Scott's Forgotten Surgeon, a biography of the man by Aubrey A. Jones, who happens to be my father. Reginald Koettlitz was 55 when he died. His life had been one of exploration, to the poles, along the Amazon, through Ethiopia. It was the heroic era of polar exploration, of Nansen, Amundsen, Shackleton and Scott. Koettlitz travelled to Antarctica with Robert F. Scott on the Discovery, where Koettlitz took the first colour photographs on the southern continent and pioneered medical advances. The Koettlitz family motto was nils, sine, labore, which translates to nothing without labour, or nothing without effort. In the 19th century, travelling the globe and enduring Antarctica certainly required not a small amount of labour. Reginald Koettlitz is my great-great-uncle. His surname is where the K in my pen name originates. My real middle name starts with an M, but I've always used K for my writing. It's a more impactful letter. It has resonance with other science fiction writers, and of course there's the Koettlitz heritage, which is pretty cool. That motto feels increasingly relevant, 110 years after the man's death. We live in an age of acceleration, of shortcuts and life hacks. All that matters is end product, is content, is having more. The joy of making recedes every day, as the process of creation is deemed unnecessary. We've become transfixed by the spot of light on the wall, thinking it to be the light itself, forgetting that it's only a byproduct. We secede our agency and innovation, and being in such a rush to reach the end, we forget to live. A deep value resides in slowness. When I started writing my weekly serial in 2021, at the time I didn't realise it would take me another 4.5 years to complete. It was a long, at times agonising process. It was the most difficult project I've ever attempted. The stories absorbed everything that flowed through my brain in those 4.5 years, repurposed those influences, recontextualised, transformed it into something new. It is a product uniquely of its time, representing my brain in that period. I could not have written it at any other moment in my life. The tortured artist trope doesn't ring true for me. While the process of creation swings wildly between being effortless and excruciating, my main relationship with writing is one of joy. It's hard to overstate how much I love writing, whether it's non-fiction journal entries like this, or chapters of a fiction novel. I wouldn't do it otherwise, because it takes up an enormous chunk of my life, time I'm not getting back. That my efforts produce this newsletter, or produce the epic Tales from the Triverse serial, is almost coincidental. It's the reflection on the cave wall, the consequence of prior actions, evidence that something happened. For a reader, those byproducts are necessary if they're to be able to encounter and interact with the writing, but for me as the writer, they're largely incidental. The act of creation is the important part, the truly satisfying and meaningful part. That effort imbues the end product with meaning and value. I suspect that this is why I embrace serial fiction, the act of writing and publishing as I go, rather than completing a manuscript first, exposes the act of creation to the reader. It's more uncommon for a reader to only ever have access to the finished product, the book, the movie, the song. And so, to be there as the thing is born, as it goes from not existing to existing, is a glimpse into the weird alchemy that's at the heart of human creativity. Week by week, readers come along for the ride and can feel the stresses and strains of the story forming itself before their eyes. When I sent out the last chapter of Tales from the Triverse in January, some readers have been there since the beginning. 4.5 years of living with the story as it clawed its way out of my brain, exposing the process and allowing readers to be so close to the furnace. Exposing the process and allowing readers to be so close to the furnace has inherent risks, but the reward can be immense. They see the light itself, not just the pale reflection on the wall. When I was perhaps 10 years old, I stumbled upon a VHS recording of a behind-the-scenes promo documentary about Return of the Jedi. I loved the Star Wars films, even though I was too young to have seen them in cinemas. The documentary included footage of the huge miniature sets of the Death Star, with complex camera rigs and mini-explosions. That looks like a lot of work, I thought. A few years later, after I'd watched The Terminator far too young, I found a VHS documentary on the making of the movie in a shop. A combination of VHS plus shop plus making of documentary does not really compute in 2026, which included insights into Arnold's prosthetics, the puppetry of the endoskeleton in the finale, and an ingenious trick during the car chase scene. Rather than have Schwarzenegger be on the bonnet of a fast-moving car, they instead had the vehicle be stationary while driving a truck past in the opposite direction, with a pretend wall strapped to its side. In camera, it looked like the car was moving at speed down an alleyway. It was so clever, so simple a solution. Constructing the fake wall, mounting it on the truck, timing everything perfectly. Knowing about that kind of puzzle-solving ingenuity didn't detract from the film, but enhanced my enjoyment. The amount of human hours required to produce it, and the unique perspectives that combine together to produce an incredible film. One man's initial vision, filtered through hundreds of cast and crew, onto film, then into cinemas, and finally into our VCR, and onto the television screen. A miracle of effort. Part of the thrill of learning how something was made is the way it bridges the knowledge gap. It becomes more possible that I could also do something similar. Studying the theory of an art form, reading interviews with authors and musicians and filmmakers and game developers, it all combines into a big melting pot inside my brain. It's the same rush as playing sport or taking part in intensive physical activity. After going for a run, I feel invigorated and happier, even while being exhausted and aching. The act of creativity, in my case writing, has a similar impact on my brain. I'm not a religious person, but there's something spiritual about engaging our bodies, whether it's physical or mental, by using our arms and legs or solving problems and conjuring up ideas. We're proving our existence. We're only here for a little while, so it would seem churlish to not make use of these vessels that we're piloting about the place. The magic is in the doing, though, not in the finishing. To continue with the sports metaphor, I can travel 5 kilometres in a car, but it's not the same as running a 5k race. To paraphrase Gary Marcus, watching someone else lift weights will not give you bigger muscles. I can commission someone else to make an object for me, but it's not the same as doing it myself. Even if the end result is the same, even if the destination is the same, it's for nothing if we skip the journey itself. Technology has always been about augmenting the human experience, and often offers shortcuts. Some of those shortcuts open up entirely new paths, which can be even more exciting. The printing press removed the need for books to be copied painstakingly by hand, and that intensive process and act of creation became unnecessary. Digital video made it far more affordable for people to make movies, removing the need for expensive film stocks and the complications of developing and cutting negatives. It's still a difficult and involved process to make books and movies. Those changes opened up new routes to explore, rather than narrowing the choices. In both cases, telling a story with words or images remained just as challenging, even if capturing and reproduction were simplified. The development of Photoshop opened up new options for designers and photographers, but still required someone to add their skill to the equation. There remained a process, an effort. Nils sine labore. Life is friction, and humans have a habit of trying to remove as much of that friction as possible. In many cases, this makes sense and benefits us all. If we want to travel 500 miles, it's a lot easier to do that with modern transport technology than walking there with a half-dead donkey and being attacked by bandits along the way. I use Scrivener for all my long-form writing, which is another effort to remove friction. There's a world in which I wrote all of Tales from the Triverse by hand with pen and paper, then created duplicates and hand-delivered through readers' letterboxes. It was considerably easier, though, to keep track of the project with a tool such as Scrivener and to publish each chapter via an email newsletter. Technology reduced friction. I've come to realise that there's an inverse bell curve to friction. Too much friction and life is prohibitively difficult. Logic may indicate that the answer is therefore to remove all friction from our lives, but that's a trap. The end point is that we become lifeless globs, the future humans from WALL-E, where the removal of friction results in the removal of meaning. When life is nothing but friction, there can be no enjoyment, no meaning. Basic survival is the only concern. As friction reduces and life becomes easier, so we're able to explore what being alive really means. Keep going in that same direction, reducing friction to zero, and we enter the end of the bell curve. The experience of life diminishes. When everything is easy and effortless, why bother at all? Nils sine labore. The meaning of that phrase is not life is difficult. It isn't a complaint. The point is that the labour, the work, the effort is the point. In 2022 we entered a new age in which we could have something without effort. It's forced a reckoning, a reconsidering of what it means to exist. If we so desire, we can skip our lives entirely, sit in a chair, have food delivered to the front door, work remotely, generate an infinity of images and videos and text with a basic prompt. Our bodies are already optional, and our minds are next. In the past, nils sine labore was a universal truth. Everything was difficult, all the time. Wealth and privilege could help, as always, but the world required direct intervention if you wanted something to happen. In the 21st century, for some of us, nils sine labore has become at least partly optional. There are areas where I will embrace a lack of friction. I use a washing machine, even though I could wash my clothes by hand. I use an electric oven and hob rather than lighting a fire in the garden each night. These are all frictions I can do without. Besides, using these tools expands my range of options rather than limiting them. I also try to make my own bread, though. I don't need to, but the process is fun, and the end result is usually better than what I can buy in the shop. I grind my own coffee too. It tastes a bit better than pre-ground beans, but I do it primarily because I love the ritual. It's not necessary, but it adds something intangible but vital to my day. I could generate a novel with a prompt, but I choose to spend 4.5 years writing it chapter by chapter, painstakingly, until it is done. It's highly inefficient, but it makes me feel more alive with each completed sentence. I've always been hugely enthusiastic about technology. I'm a techie, through and through. I'm not even anti-AI from a conceptual point of view, though I am firmly against the current crop of deeply unethical companies and tech leaders. If someone builds an ethically trained and fully licensed LLM, I'll consider using it to reduce some of that daily friction. The trick is to identify healthy friction from unhealthy friction. What is the friction that brings you joy, either in the moment or in retrospect? What friction gets in the way of what you want to accomplish? It's a tough thing to figure out. There were many times during the creation of Tales from the Triverse that I hit walls, got stuck, felt uncertain, and I could easily have turned to technology to get me out of those holes. Instead, I worked through them and often came up with far better ideas as part of the process. Each of those difficult moments ended up improving the book, but at the time it absolutely felt like unwanted friction. There's a fuzziness to the human experience that makes it impossible to plot neatly on a graph. One person's unacceptable friction is another's reason for being. Perhaps the trick is to check the map for alternate routes, rather than defaulting to the shortcut every time. Might find something unexpected along the way. Thanks for listening. You can leave comments, find lots more like this, and go and read Tales from the Triverse if you want. It's all there and available to read for free at the moment over at simonkjones.substack.com.